Hello everybody! This week we are doing a new run. At first I was unsure whether to do it soon after Mewtwo because I thought they would be too similar, and while the late game will not be that much different from the previous video, the early game is a whole other story. I was surprised to find out how many possible different routes the run could have taken thanks to the fact that Mew can learn every move in the game. Quick reminder of the rules, since last week I kinda forgot about them too. I can only use my starter Pokemon in combat. I can't use any consumable items in combat. I can't raise my Pokemon's evasion in any way, and I am not allowed to use cheats or glitches. Unlike Mewtwo, this time we start with Pound, which is a worst move and makes the early fights slightly more difficult, but that is not a problem thanks to our great stats. And another benefit is the fact that since it's a normal type move, I don't have to do the struggle thing at any point. You might be thinking that Roxanne will be very hard, but you would be wrong, because just outside the forest there is a random guy who gives you Bullet Seed. Not a great move, but a super effective one nonetheless. Thanks to it, she is not that bad. Nosepass, as usual, is a bit harder to take down for a few different reasons, but nothing the creator of all Pokémons can't deal with. Unfortunately, Bullet Seed does not cooperate, so we have to sit through her spamming potions on this piece of rock. Eventually, she runs out of healing items, so after defeating the first gym, we have to do the usual stuff. From here I can do the optional fight against May. Her team is still weak, and even if I don't have great moves for her, I can take her down without any issues. I gave her Trico because it's the only one who might outspeed and has a dark move. Everything else is much weaker to me. Next, we have to move on to the second gym. I was unsure whether to do it now or later. While it's true that my stats are much better than his, there is the not so insignificant fact that most of my moveset is physical, so if he survives a bit and starts setting up against me, it could get bad. Then I remembered he only has fighting moves, who I resist, so I decided to fight Brawly now. It was not an easy fight, because my best move is Mega Punch, which is not good, but eventually I can get through his team, taking a decent chunk of damage, but not dying, so that is the important part. By this point you should know that the next two grunts are very weak, and I never lost to them. But this time things went south, and I almost lost. The first one goes smoothly, I can just spit some seeds on him. But then I accidentally used Transform and turned into Zubat, which is not a good Pokemon. I struggled quite a bit to stay alive. The rival Zubat took me very low, and I was scared for his second Pokemon. But thanks to Leech Life, of all things, I managed to just barely defeat the Carvana, That was by far the closest fight I have ever had against these two guys. After that death scare and having to listen to Archie speak, I can go for an easier fight, and May offers exactly that. Her Pokémons are not very good, with the exception of Grovyle, but even if he is cool, he can defeat a mythical Mew, so with a few more hits, her team crumbles apart and we can move on to the next gym. Like usual, I sold everything I own to afford the flamethrower, and while it hurts to sell useful stuff, this fight would have been a lot harder without a fire move. All of my other attacks could not do much to Magneton, so unless I wanted to roll the die, this was the best course of action in my opinion. Once we obtained the third badge, we can proceed with the story. The next stop is at the top of the local volcano where Maxie is about to make it erupt, to wake up Groudon, I think. This fight is also kinda easy. Thanks to Flamethrower, I can ignore Intimidate. The only annoying thing is that Camerupt resists fire, so it does not die in one hit, but that is okay. I was kinda worried about Flannery, but then Mew learned Psychic, so this is going to be a lot easier. Even if I have less special attack than Mewtwo, her team gets melted by Psychic. This is what Mewtwo could have been if only he learned Psychic a bit sooner. Once we defeated all of her Pokémons and earned the next badge, we can move on to Dad's gym. This one is actually going to be a bit harder because they have dark moves and are a bit stronger, especially Slacking, but I have a plan for him. Dig has not been very useful yet, but I can use it to cheese him. I'm going to burrow when he can attack and pop up in the loafing turns. Unfortunately, it does not do much damage, but I use it just enough to bring him in psychic range and finish the fight with a couple more attacks. At this point, I debated a bit whether to teach Surf to Mew. It would be a good move, but I am not sure he needs it, and I would have to wait a bit before removing it. So I decided against it, and instead grabbed both Ice Beam and Thunderbolt. From here the run is kinda similar to Mewtwo, or at least the moveset is. Just like in that run, I can take care of May with ease, and the gym fight that follows against Winona is not much different. With 3 strong special moves that can cover perfectly her team, there is not much she can do about it, other than stall me a bit with the Pelipper, I guess, but that's more annoying than useful. Also, I just lied, I actually forgot Thunderbolt and did not want to backtrack without Fly, so just used Shockwave instead. It's not like it makes a whole lot of difference anyway. Unlike the Mewtwo run, the next thing I did is to go fight May again for the last time. It was not very hard, and to be fair, I did not have any expectation to the contrary. The only thing that kinda changed is the fact that now she has one more Pokémon, but it's not going to make a difference. After some protect stalling, we are done with her and can proceed with the next major beat in the story, where Maxie actually manages to wake up Groudon. Unfortunately for him, the legendary flies away and he attacks us. His team is not very strong, and this time I am not stalled by the Camerupt because I have Psychic, so this fight was barely worth a mention. Next, I had to take on Tate and Liza. Just like with Mewtwo, I used the Shadow Ball TM, and this time it makes even more sense since I have a lot less special attack, so there is almost no way I can brute force this. I did think for a second to use Surf, but the damage is reduced since it's shared and it's not stab, so I don't think it would have had great results. Shadow Ball instead is a guaranteed success, so we are done with this gym too. From here I have to go help Steven out with the Team Magma guys. This fight was quite boring, as it usually is. While I was spamming A to get through it, I thought I could do a physical moveset with Bulk Up, Shadow Ball, Return and Earthquake. That would be much different than Mewtwo, but unfortunately in this game physical attackers kinda get shafted. There are 3 trainers with Intimidate in the league alone, and their AI is not too bad, so they know to send them out soon. Ultimately, I decided to stick with special moves, but waited a bit more before teaching Calm Mind. After beating some sense into Archie, I can make use of the Dive HM that Steven so conveniently gave us to reach the cave where Kyogre sleeps. Here it's Archie who attacks us, wanting to wake up the legendary, but unfortunately for him, his fate remains the same. His team does not handle Thunderbolt very well, and we can learn every move, so he is screwed. But fear not, because even in defeat, the red orb activates on its own and wakes up the killer whale, who, much like the real-life counterpart, does not care about humans and just wants to beef with oversized land creatures. If you did not know, orcas have been known to kill moose. Anyway, getting back to video game Pokémons. Juan is the last gym leader and he is also weak to electric. Kinda. This time I decided to not set up, and much like in the last video, I underestimated his tankiness because Kingdra survives a Psychic. It tries to use scummy dodge tactics, but Mew does not allow and kills the enemy soon after. All badges done, so we just have the league left to do. Like always, before we can start that gauntlet, we have to take care of another fight with Wally, just after we entered the Victory Road. This one goes very much like the one with Mewtwo. The only Pokemon who can be a problem is Magneton, but just one magnet is not enough to pull Mew away from his goal of becoming champion. I guess I can mention Gardevoir leaving a hit, but it just spends time using Future Sight, so no biggie. Unlike in the previous video, I don't have to spend time in Victory Road looking for stuff, so we can just start the final chapter. Sidney is first, and he is not that bad. Unfortunately, my hyena leaves and manages to throw some sand at me. This can be pretty bad, but hopefully it will not be a problem later. Of course, I immediately have to eat my words because I start missing against Shift 3. It takes a while and it's not a pretty sight, but eventually he dies. The rest of the team is easier. I did not miss again, so not perfect, but Sidney is done. Next up we have Phoebe, and my strategy is still the same. Set up while she protects, and then sweep her team. I was kinda surprised that she got the double protect. That could be bad, because Dusclops has pressure, so I consume more PPs, and in the long run could cause me to run out of psychics, because it does not have that many. Fortunately, it's not the case. Her second Dusclops lives and does a decent chunk of damage back with a Shadow Ball, but that's about it. The rest of her team is a lot less tanky, so we can just sweep through it. Then it's time for Glacia. Much like last time, I used a Calm Mind against her lead and then tried to sweep. This time I underestimated her even more, and her first Glalie lived and lowered my speed. This is not good, but thankfully her team is quite slow, so I am still faster than them. I adapt and use Psychic on the next one, so nothing else happens other than her distraction. If you are hearing me a bit nasally, more than usual, is because I have a cold. Hopefully it will pass soon. After taking down the ice switch, we have to deal with the Drake. This time, since I have Ice Beam, he is not that bad. The only Pokemon that might be a problem is Kingdra, because I think it will survive a Psychic, but other than that, this fight should go by quite smoothly. You know what? All of this Ice Beam usage is kinda making me like Ice types a bit too much, so one of the next runs will be with Snorunt to temper my expectations. Kingdra does live, but does not bother attacking me, so Drake is defeated too. You know what I always say? If it works, don't fix it. For Wallace, I did the usual stuff of setting up against his lead, and when my HP gets low, I went on the offensive. Between Thunderbolt and Psychic, I thought I could sweep him easily. That was indeed the case, and since Wailord did not set up Rain, Ludicolo was slow too. At this point I thought the run was over and I just had a few stragglers left to clean up. You probably understood that I am just buying time until his ace shows up. Milotic survived Thunderbolt, poisoned me, then Synchronize triggered, so he got poisoned, but then his bear reactivated, so he did not die to Toxic. Thankfully, the next hit takes him down and does not allow him to stall me. Not going to lie, that was much easier than the Mewtwo run, and the level was almost the same. Thank you for watching. If you liked the video, remember to like and share and subscribe, as well as ringing the bell, and if I don't ask too much, leave a comment too. You know, the usual stuff a YouTuber has to say. See you next week. Bye!